Today I'll be talking about a notorious serial killer by the name of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, to many people, was a madman. He was also a person who was very intelligent and was very charismatic. He was born in Burlington, Vermont, and then was transplanted to Tacoma, Washington at the age of 4. He grew up poor and resented the fact that he was of a lower social class. It is said that his grandfather molested him between the ages of 2 and 3 before they moved. He was always self-conscious about his social class and always felt like he had to compete with others while growing up. In the end, he regretted not having money and always strived to attain money. Ted Bundy had a misconception of the world. He developed social barriers for himself that hindered his chances of making actual friendships. At a young age, he's always fascinated about how people became friends and wanted to stay friends. However, because of his lower social class and his fascination with the higher class people, he always tried to fit in, but was always unable to do so at an early age. After a while, he began having sexual fantasies about women and would buy pornography to satisfy those fantasies. The pornography was violent, and it treated women as objects to be gained. It was during this time when he was buying this pornography that was violent in material that it twisted his mind in thinking that women were objects instead of human beings. Soon the pornography was not enough for his desires, and he went on to become a peeping Tom to watch women undress. Now, he was caught only once peeping in on somebody undressing, but it was during his school hours and he was only suspended for 2 weeks. He's in interviews with him, he said to have peeped on numerous women undressing before he actually began his first kill. Although Ted Bundy had problems with pornography, he showed remarkable talents as a charismatic person in his younger adulthood. So between 22 to 25, he was really a charismatic person. He was able to fit in with different people, with different crowds, and he would change his personality to engage with each set of social groups. The social blending allowed him to attain multiple occupations, and for a while he was successful. There's even a moment where he wrote a book detailing how women should avoid getting raped. Ironic, right? The attention that he got from all these jobs was very rewarding for Bundy. He centered his goals and desires at being socially accepted, however he was unable to handle rejection. After some time had passed, he began to lose his occupations and was unable to hold down a steady job. Each setback that he had in his occupational life just set him further back and was crippling for his mental state. What makes Ted Bundy even more apparent as a serial killer and methodical was that he had dumping sites mapped out from his previous occupations. He was once a Boy Scout and he loved the woods, and he always felt most happiest in the woods. It was during these happy moments that Ted Bundy started mapping out different sites to dump the bodies of his victims. As his adolescence wore off, he grew stronger and he grew more vengeful of the fact that he was still unable to obtain jobs. Before Ted Bundy started any killing, he had mapped out dumping sites for his victims, and is said to have had multiple sites. Because his rampage stretches several states wide, it is believed that a lot of his dumping sites have never been found. Ted Bundy has reportedly killed 30 people, or 30 plus people, and yet there's still some investigators that say he killed over 100. One investigator who was investigating his Seattle killings says he can link him to at least 45 more in that state alone. His typical victims were girls between the ages of 14 and 22. However, his youngest victim was 12 years old. But that was later on before he in Florida. He usually preyed on the girls that went in sorority houses and that went to colleges, and his method of trying to lure them away, he used two different methods. One, he would just simply stalk them, and when he got them in a place where he felt he was in total control, he would lunge out and just simply attack. There are other times where he would pose as having car trouble on the side of the road and would be in an arm sling to pose as less threatening, and would find girls on the road that way. Ted Bundy usually waited until he was in a position of power before he performed any kind of act of seducing and trying to, attack his victims. Sometimes that meant he would violently attack them in the dark areas or use his charisma to lure them away from larger crowds. Typically, he would use a tire iron or a wooden bat to forcibly hit him in the head and knock him unconscious. There were some bodies that were found with the skull crushed in, indicating that they did not survive the initial impact. There are even some cases where some of his victims were found with makeup put on and their hair done while they were already dead. So he did delve into necrophilia. Ted Bundy was able to get away from law enforcement for so long because of his intelligence. He would always try to outwit the law enforcement that was after him, and there's a couple of cases where, in one instance, he was able to walk away out of jail after being arrested. He even walked into a courtroom setting when it was in session, and nobody recognized him during the courtroom session. Why he was in the courtroom was undetermined. Bundy had numerous law enforcement agencies after him, and for a while, those law enforcement agencies, everywhere he went, they were looking for him. It wasn't until when he was in Florida that he started painting a trail for law enforcement to follow. Ted Bundy had become a frequent alcoholic, and his alcohol intoxication levels were always erratic. In fact, this played on his paranoia, which was becoming unchecked, and he was beginning to lose his self-consciousness. He began to entertain many fetishes, and he allowed his paranoia to overcome his psyche. He could be found using multiple stolen credit cards and shoplifting. It is because of the stolen credit cards and shoplifting that helped law enforcement agencies track him all the way into Florida. There was one day when a Florida highway patrolman pulled him over for erratic driving. He suspected the driver of drinking under the influence, and also suspected him of being wanted. It is at this time that Ted Bundy was wanted by the FBI. He had made a top 10 most wanted list. Now, his rampage was between 1970 and 1970. Between 1970 and 1979. When Bundy was arrested in Florida, he was arrested for 3 murders and was convicted and sentenced to die by the Florida electric chair. He was arrested by that Florida highway patrolman, and during his time in custody, Ted Bundy loved the notoriety and fame that came along with his incarceration, and used it to draw out the appeals process. He attempted to plead insanity, and he attempted to plead that he had an unfair trial. Both were to no avail. In total, the appeals process cost the state $9 million. His court record was the longest in Florida's history, totaling over 28,000 pages, or that of equal to the Encyclopedia for Britannica. While the appeals process was continuing, Bundy received multiple fan letters from women while he was incarcerated, and he was even able to marry and have a child. I don't understand that either. During the interviews of Ted Bundy, he showed no remorse for his actions. Ted Bundy was quoted as saying, "I don't feel no guilt. I am one of the coldest motherfuckers you'll ever put your eyes on," end quote. Ted Bundy allowed a minister to interview him. The minister wanted Bundy to show remorse for his actions and to explore the nature of his rapes in order to show remorse. It was during the interview that we saw the methodical/old Ted Bundy come back to life. Bundy allowed the minister to hear his confession, but not until after Bundy controlled the dialogue in the room. It was this interview that showed the world that Ted Bundy was in total free will of his actions during his killings. Ted Bundy died January 24th, 1989 at 7 a.m. The whole world was either watching, tailgating, celebrating, or even was hearing the news of his final hour on broadcast radio. As a matter of fact, all this happened up until the final heartbeat. It is my belief that if his social his social consciousness was addressed psychologically and his social concerns addressed at an early age, that we would not know Ted Bundy to be the murderer that he notoriously was. I believe that with psychology, that early psychology, that we can prevent serial murders from happening in the future.